Hi there, and welcome to Schoolhouse Jazz. My name is Dennis Green from Jazz 88.3 KCCK, our jazz radio station here in the Cedar Rapids and Iowa City area. And Schoolhouse Jazz is a band that goes around to schools and community groups, the library programs, and things like that, teaching you about a very fun kind of music called jazz. And I'll explain a little bit more about the history of jazz and how it came to be as we go along. Now, of course, today we can't play for you live. So what we've done is we've set up here on a beautiful apron here at Kirkwood Community College, and we're going to play some jazz for you, tell some stories, and you know what? If you want to get up and clap and sing along or even dance while you're listening to this music, by all means do. I won't tell a soul. We're really happy that you're watching our show tonight. Before we go any further along, though, I would like to introduce you to the members of the Schoolhouse Jazz Band. I'm going to begin in the back with our drummer, and that is Dennis McPartland. Hi, Dennis.
Unmasked forever.
That's our masked Schoolhouse Jazz Band. And right next to him on the bass is Vivian Shanley. Vivian, pull it down just a second and give us a big smile. Over here on the keyboards is Grant LaPointe. Hi, Grant. Our horn section on the front line. This is Cavan O'Hara in the blue t-shirt. Hi, Cavan. Right next to him is Peter Hart. Hi, Peter. And on trumpet we have Al Naylor. And in the back on the guitar is Bob Dunn. Jazz is the first kind of music that was invented in America. But the story of jazz actually begins a long time before there even was an America. The story of jazz actually begins in Africa, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And if you've ever studied countries in Africa in social studies class or history, you know that the drum was a very important part of social and religious life in countries in Africa for a really long, long time. And rhythms that started in Africa are actually a part of our music today through jazz. And Dennis is going to demonstrate for us a little bit of African rhythm. Can you demonstrate a little African rhythm drum beats for us, Dennis? The drum beats and rhythm that started in countries in Africa came to the United States when people from the countries of Africa were forced to come to the United States during the time of slavery. And of course, that was a terrible time in the history of our country. And as we all well know, even today, the things that started way, way back a long, long time ago are still things that affect us and still things that we're working on and trying to improve today. After the Civil War was over and the slaves had been freed, it was still not a happy time for many people in the South, a lot of them African American, but they always were able to take refuge in and get release and happiness from music. I talked to you a little bit ago about the drum beats and rhythms that started in countries in Africa and came to the United States. And the reason why I wanted to do that is because the music that started in places like New Orleans and became jazz as time went on was different than the music that people had listened to up until that time. And it had a certain something. And we want to demonstrate that for you right now. So, a common measure of music, you learn about measures of music in music class, right? A common measure of music has 4 beats. And what I want our band to do is I want them to play a melody, play a little thing for us now. And Dennis is going to give every drum beat his 4 beats per measure. I want you to give those, just make those really even. Just, yeah. And then the rest of our band's going to play along with him. 2. Now that's the way that a band might have played if it was coming out of the European tradition of music, like symphony orchestras and community bands. But what happened in New Orleans was the musician said, well, that's fine for some of the time, maybe at an orchestra concert, but when we're out playing in a parade, we want to feel the music just a little bit differently. So we're going to, what we say in jazz, swing the beat. Swing or syncopate the beat. Dennis, give us a nice little swing beat on the drums there.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3,
See how that sounded different than the first time that we played? That's because our drummer and our bass player and our well, I see that Bob has brought out the banjo. We'll get to hear the banjo in a minute too. All of them swung the beat and syncopated it. So instead of having 4 even beats like this, they emphasized beat 2 and beat 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Anytime that you want to clap your hands or snap your fingers or dance along with a song, it has that same quality that in jazz we call swing. And the music that we know today as jazz came during the early part of the 20th century. And it started in the town of New Orleans. Now, if you've ever been to New Orleans, you know that the music of New Orleans happens outside in parades. And in fact, it's kind of right that we're here playing for you outside because jazz actually began outside in parades in New Orleans. There are parades in New Orleans every day, and the music of a New Orleans parade is jazz. An early jazz song that any jazz musician in New Orleans would have played on the streets of that town was one that you've probably heard. It's called When the Saints Go Marching In, and we're going to play this in the style of a New Orleans style jazz band. You can see that Bob has exchanged his guitar for a banjo, which was an early instrument used in jazz. And we're going to play When the Saints Go Marching In. had a chance to hear our band play all together. Now, I want to walk you through each member of our jazz band and let you listen to what each individual instrument brings to our ensemble. And we'll start with Dennis, who is going to take us through the different parts of his drum set, which is actually not one single instrument, but several instruments. Dennis?
Hello out there. The most fun thing about the drum set is I get to play 4 or sometimes 5 things at once. I use my feet with my bass drum, my big sound, low sound. If I add my hi-hat, I use that on the offbeat. Sometimes I play my hi-hat like you've heard in rock music, on the hi-hat like that, and if I add the bass drum, you got a basic dance beat, our dance beat. The snare drum, you heard that in the marching music, but in rock music and jazz, I use it to play the backbeat. Up here is my high tom. Floor tom. High tom, floor tom. The crash cymbal. The ride cymbal that I use a lot in jazz music. Now, as the drummer got more adventurous, he started to do things between his snare and bass drum. Bebop! The drum set in 45 seconds. Well, it was a little longer.
The bass player in the jazz band helps the drummer keep the rhythm and also plays a lot of the low notes. Now, if you've seen a symphony orchestra, you are familiar with the double bass, and it plays differently in the jazz band than it does in the symphony orchestra. I'm going to have Vivian get her bow out there, so play a little like if you were in the orchestra, Vivian. Now, in the jazz band, she doesn't use the bow, or at least not very often. She uses her fingers and plucks the strings more like a guitar. And in the original way that jazz was first done, and again in those New Orleans style parades a long time ago, and the marches, it was what we call a 2-beat rhythm on the bass. Give us a little 2-beat. As bass players got more complex and the music got more complicated, then the bass player, instead of just wanting to play those 2 notes all the time, started to play notes in different rhythms, and we had what was called a 4-beat or a walking bass line. And one of the reasons we call it a walking bass line is that actually we'll see Vivian's fingers walk up her bass as she plays. So plays a little walking 4-beat bass. See her upper hand there? See how it walks up and down the strings? The other stringed instrument in our jazz band is the guitar. And Bob is going to talk a little bit about the role of the guitar and other stringed instruments similar like the banjo and how that has changed throughout the years in jazz.
Okay, well, in early jazz that took place in New Orleans in the 20s and into the 30s, the banjo was the string instrument of choice. A little bit later on, they decided to favor the guitar, and it was an acoustic guitar. It looked something like this, but it didn't have all the stuff drilled into the top of it. And in that style, the guitar sort of helped to reinforce the basic 4-beat rhythm. So I'm going to play with Dennis and Vivian here, and we're going to do a blues in the key of F, in about the style that maybe you might have heard Count Basie's band in Kansas City doing it in 1937 or something like that. Okay. One, two, 3, 4. Later on, they figured out how to amplify the guitar by the use of magnetic pickups, and the magnetic pickup essentially does the same thing that the microphone does for my voice. The microphone makes the voice louder, and the pickups makes the guitar louder. So now and this is again F blues, but just a little bit different tempo and a little bit different style. This is called free copying, where I don't play just on all 4 beats, but syncopate the rhythms.
The piano is a very versatile instrument in jazz. It's one of the few instruments that can play an entire jazz song all by itself because, of course, a pianist has 88 notes to choose from on his keyboard. He's got the black keys, he's got the white keys, and he or she can play all kinds of different songs. They can play as part of a band, but they can also play by themselves, as I'm sure you've heard piano players play by themselves a lot. So, as I said, 88 keys on a piano, and Grant plays, he plays the high notes with his right hand, and his low notes with his left hand. And of course, as a pianist, he has to do a lot of playing all of those things together with both hands, sometimes doing a lot of different things. Now, originally in jazz, and even in today in jazz, the acoustic big piano, either an upright piano or a grand piano, is what's used. Grant has an electronic keyboard today that sounds like a regular piano, but I think there are some other sounds in there too that are kind of fun to play. Thanks very much, Grant. We're going to move on to our front line, our horn section now. And just like the piano, the horns can play all kinds of different sounds. And Al is going to demonstrate a couple of different styles of trumpet that he has here. And then he's going to show us his collection of mutes, which are very fun and change the sounds of his trumpet quite a bit. And Al, let's start off with that kind of funny-shaped trumpet there. Tell me about that.
This is called a flugelhorn, and it's kind of a combination of a trumpet and a cornet, and it gets a nice, really warm sound. You heard me play the trumpet, and it's a bright, full sound. This is more dark. You heard me play the trumpet, and it has a brighter sound. Now we want to have some different sounds on occasion. So I had this one mute called a pixie mute and another mute called a plunger. And they put them together and they get a nice kind of what I call greasy sound. And then I can play what's called a bucket mute to get a whole different sound. It doesn't fall apart. Nice warm sound with that. And we have the silent mute. This is for people who want to practice and not be heard. This is as loud as I can play. So it really cuts the sound out. It's good for practicing. It's called a straight mute. This is used in concert bands a lot. Nice bright sound. This is called a harmon mute. And there's two parts to the harmon mute. One, it has a stem that comes in and out with it here, if you can kind of see that a little bit. Okay? So I put the stem all the way in, and I get kind of a funny, like cartoonish kind of sound. But I take that stem out and drop it on the ground. And I get a nice warm sound that was used a lot by a guy named Miles Davis.
We have two saxophones in our band, but you'll notice, I'll have the two of you kind of hold those up, you'll notice that they are a little different. Peter's is a little taller than Cavan's, and that's called a tenor saxophone, and Cavan plays the alto saxophone. Why don't you each play just a few notes so
Okay.
and so you can hear the difference in the sound between the two of them.
Sure.
Now I'm going to ask Peter and Cavan to demonstrate something that is really part of the foundation, if not the total foundation of jazz. Now you'll notice that our musicians up here, all of them are playing from memory. They're not usually using any music. They're not reading music off stands or anything. Now, a lot of that is because these are songs they play a lot and that are very popular in jazz and they know them very well, but also because a part of jazz is created on the spot. It's called improvisation. I'm going to ask Peter to play a song that we've all heard before, and then he and Cavan are going to take that melody and make something totally new and different on the spot for us right here. Peter? So many different kinds of jazz. There's fast jazz and slow jazz. There's small group jazz. You can have jazz in a great big band. And one kind of jazz that is very fun and musicians really like to play, it's also got kind of a funny name. It's called bebop. And we're going to do a bebop tune right now that was made famous by a musician named Dizzy Gillespie. And Dizzy wrote songs that were about things that were important to him, like his favorite snacks. Dizzy liked peanuts. And so he wrote a song called Salt Peanuts. And as we get ready to play Salt Peanuts, I want to say a quick hello to our other bass player. This band is so hot, we need two bass players to keep it going. This is Blake Shaw. So Blake, pull your, just give us a little, Hi, Blake. So Blake is joining us on bass for this. It's called Salt Peanuts. Here we go.
We go 1, 2, ready, go.
Salt peanuts, salt peanuts. Salt peanuts, salt peanuts. Salt peanuts, salt peanuts. Salt peanuts, salt peanuts. thank you for watching our Schoolhouse Jazz video today. I hope that you've enjoyed learning a little bit about jazz. Now, if you want to learn more about jazz or hear more jazz songs, there are lots of resources online, lots of videos on YouTube and websites. I invite you to go to kcck.org. That's the website of Iowa's jazz radio station. We have a lot of resources there for students and people who are interested in learning more about jazz. You can also visit us on Facebook, or you can actually listen to jazz on the radio every day at 88.3, or using your iPhone or Android phone at kcck.org. We're going to close with a song by a very famous jazz band leader named Duke Ellington, who worked with a songwriter and musician named Billy Strayhorn. And Billy and Duke lived in New York, like a lot of jazz musicians did. And Billy was riding the train, the subway, one day. And he wrote a song about riding the subway to Harlem. And it's called Take the A-Train.